So what I'm showing you is a video of Sarah's digital day, one day. And it's screenshot by screenshot. When she's on her phone, it's over here on the left. When she's on her laptop, it's on the right. When both are operating, when it's just the phone comes to the center. And we're playing this at about 6 frames in Sarah's digital day that are taken every 5 seconds per 1 second of the video. So every time you see a second on the screen right there, it's 5 frames from her 2 digital devices taken with software I'll tell you about in a little bit that grabs the screenshot from either of those devices, encrypts it and compresses it and transmits it back to us. So you get a great look in a short amount of time at what a digital day constitutes for Sarah. And I'm going to show you about 500 Sarahs here. But Sarah's doing a lot of things. She's a Stanford student, and you can imagine that we had to negotiate with Sarah to have her digital day be a movie I could show you. None of the other people are generating movies that we show anyone. It's quite a secret. But you can see that she is doing a whole lot of different things, radically different experiences, all on a couple devices. Life is fragmented, atomized, integrated at her choosing. You can, some of the fun things to look at if you slow this down are what happens during class. Eyes on the lecture, not always what happens. In fact, if we call this the screenome, if we had a screenome for each of you while you're listening to me, it would also have some interruptions. I've been watching you the last hour. So you get this fragmented life that is constructed actively by Sarah that you can see what she's interested in. She's very much interested in retail and fashion. In fact, operates her own website in that area. And it is just a wonderful way to look at a very complex digital life. And the complexity of this life is what I want to talk about with respect to all the different things that we think media, and particularly social media, are important for, whether you're addicted to it, how it informs your politics, how it changes your relationships, how it changes learning styles, all of these different features. So this is just fun to look at. There are a bunch you can see. When you put all these screens one after the next and start looking at the time series, you realize that there's complexity there that we really didn't know about. And it kind of seems new, actually. Most of the information that we have about what's happening in these different domains that Sarah is in during the day are information about that silo. And I know the news is chock full of, we know everything about you. Facebook knows everything about you. The NSA does, Google does. But my contention and our lab's contention is that they really don't, in the sense that they don't have an easily constructed time series of how you integrate all these experiences across products, across platforms, across devices. It's not that they couldn't, it's just that they don't, and it's very complex to do this. So I'm going to talk about this, and the way I'll talk about it is a sea of data. I mean, this is a lot of data. This is only maybe an hour's worth of screenshots, and if you do it for a month, as we're doing now, you get quite a few more. But you get a sea of ones and zeros, but we don't really yet know exactly what that means for how we're consuming these products in a way that will allow us to talk about and understand how these effects occur, these effects that we're interested in. So in spite of the headlines, there's still some left to know, and our contention is we're going to need a bigger microscope. If you really want to know what a digital day is like, you're going to need a bigger microscope. Or maybe just any microscope. Maybe we don't even have one right now. Now, there are a lot of people that are working on this problem. We've got digital diaries. We shadow people around their home and their office and write down every 15 seconds. These are all research studies. Every 15 seconds what they're actually doing on their screen. We bring them into the lab and carefully catalog what they're doing. We've got built-in apps that we can do URL logging. There are people all over human-computer interaction and CS that are doing life logging and building sensors into phones and trying to take all these sensors. But it's just really been difficult to get information about what that series looks like. So we landed on the screenshot as a particular, as the way to get access, difficultly but interestingly, to get access to what's going on. A couple of reasons why we do the screenshot. It captures a broad spectrum of life. I mean, it really is the fulfillment of the digital promise. It was, decades ago, 20 or 30, or 2 or 3 decades ago, we all knew that digitization was going to bring all this stuff to our screen, but it's really only now, and I would argue in the last 3 or 4 years, that it's so easily available that a much greater swath of life is now on our screens that we use. I mean, in the Internet of Things and everything else will make this even broader every day. This has got increasing generational relevance as younger people are using the affordances in the interfaces to go quickly through all these screens. We're able to look at changes at the new speed of life. Moment by moment, second by second, is what we're finding is important, and I'll show you examples of that. We're also able to look at the specific attention. It's not how many hours did you spend with Facebook last week. It's which Facebook screen after which other Facebook screen and which part of the screen and where did you move in that screen, getting to the next piece of that. So it's specific attention, and it's a thread of attention that is cutting across different traditional buckets of experience. So the thread is weaving in and out of all the silos that we represent, that our theories represent, that our businesses represent, but you are creating your own thread through all of this. And then the screenshots, I think, are also pretty interesting because it's passive data collection. It's measured on devices that you know and love and know how to work. There are no sensors, chargers, things to carry, wear. I mean, those are all the other things that are being used here. And I'll just mention quickly that this is, the security and trust and privacy associated with this information is astounding. It's certainly more so than anything I've ever worked on in 40 years of asking people about media psychology questions. This is really personal, private stuff. So we're taking that very seriously. We talk a lot with our institutional review board here that is helping us figure out ways to encrypt and encode and keep these data sets. So this is really a pretty important piece here. People are interested in helping out if you tell them that we really don't know that much about digital technology and show them what you're going to do with it. People do have a kind of a changing attitude we see about this personal information. In fact, we go over to the medical school, and some of the research we're doing now is to look in our screenshots to do things like personal diagnostics on health issues. And they wonder, why would anyone divulge their screenome? And of course, we wonder, why would anyone divulge their genome, which they are, of course, measuring all the time. But we're recruiting people in this age range. We're paying them digitally active, not digitally active people, so we're biased in that direction. Not everyone can do this. They may have work devices that preclude them participating, but a lot of good participation. So we're collecting data, and we've collected approximately 25 million of these screenshots from about 350 people. Our first 40 people were Stanford students. All the others are adults in the real world. They're in East Palo Alto. Actually, East Palo Alto was adolescents, so we went down in age. But the majority of the people are professionally collected by survey research firms in New York, Chicago, LA. And last summer, we even did a big collection for a couple of weeks in Myanmar and China. So that's where all the people are that generate this kind of information. So I'm going to concentrate on the smartphone part of this. But this is a screenome. This is 24 hours for 30, I think there are 30 rows there, 30 days for one person. So we're able to see when did it go on, when did it go off. We've got a copy of the image. We can try to do our best to extract information from that image that might be interesting for theories or business. And it's a really complicated process to get that done, I'll say. And I'm not going to, you can look at this later. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but it's a system, a framework that is fairly complicated, and I put this up mostly to accent that there are lots of different people with different expertise that are working on this. So we're writing applications to actually measure the data. We're preparing the data to be processed. So we're not getting text files of your iMessages. We're getting words on an image. So we're doing optical character reading as well as we can, preparing the images for that type of analysis, trying to do our best with that. And we have papers that look at that specifically. We're looking at things like logo identification. We're open to any AI machine learning lab in the university that we're collaborating with that can figure out how to analyze the logos, how to do a color spectrum of a Facebook page, all these different image characteristics. We're storing the data in some creative ways, and we're allowing searching of the data, which is really important because I want to look for all the images that have any of these 5 words. And I want to get them in a nice little package, and I want to look at what came before them and after them. So that's a big part of this. So let me give you a little, some results. And I'm going to go through these quickly, but a lot of interesting things I think we're finding that are fairly new. So this is a particular data set with 133 older adults, after college, through 45, that are on their smartphones. You know, these are the kind of bar plots that we get. So they're spending about a little under 3 hours on their phones. That we kind of knew. People tell us that run the phone networks. But one of the things that we didn't have so much information about was the number of sessions per day, session defined as turning the phone on and then off. The average number of sessions is a little under 300. And it sounds fantastic, but think of the number of sessions you've generated already since I started talking. So it's turning on and off the phone. So this is a whole lot of behavior that is either directed by things the phone is doing to you, or things that you'd like to do, you'd like to find out, or maybe just habitual, or maybe even more physiologically addictive than that. These sessions are about 10 seconds long on average. The median time between smartphone sessions is a little under 6 minutes, and people travel almost 1/10 of a mile between their sessions. So just ticking down the kinds of things that you could use to describe. This is merely descriptive information. You know, a secret of how to get tenure at Stanford is don't publish descriptive information. Publish theories about how you use that information. I'm disagreeing in this case right here. I think this information is so new and so important and so provocative. It's methods oriented, but it is really, like the microscope, I think opening up a lot of different ways to theorize about what people are doing that you couldn't do because you didn't have visibility into how people were actually using the information. So let me run through just a couple results. The results are in words here. The median time per segment, we do survival analyses where we take an individual and go, how long does that segment, when one activity begins and another ends, how long does it last for different participants overall? About 14 seconds. So stuff you're doing on the phone lasts about 14 seconds. Prior research on the laptop showed it lasted about 17 seconds. For everything, writing, social relationships, thoughtful things as well as quick things, so short bursts. We have analysis strategies where we're able to look at between the phone and the laptop by looking at the arcs, and the movie of this is actually really nice, I don't have this, but looking at the arcs of where people go, what kinds of content they go to from particular kinds of content. This was an interesting person. We have to do this by person. In fact, averaging across people is really not useful in this research. You get averages that describe nobody. The variance is so huge that we're really doing this by person. So this person had 57% of their switches between devices. So they're doing a lot of navigating that day. So we're very interested in between screens as well as within screen switching. We know where you are when you generate any particular image. So we know that this person was consuming news in the dining hall. This is the Stanford campus right here. And they were gaming in the residence hall. I mean, this is just a sample of the kind of result, but this is really important. I mean, this is a holy grail in psychology, social psychology, of knowing in situ, knowing the situation, the context that people were in when information was being processed. In fact, there are many psychologists would say that that's more important than knowing what it is they were actually processing. So this is a way to do that. Another kind of analysis that we're doing. There are 30 rows in this graph right here. And it's for 3 days, and the colors have to do with the kind of content that people are switching between, and I'm not even going to tell you the code for that. But what we do is take that whole series and try to cluster these people to find out who's similar and who's different. And one of the things, so like this, if you start clustering, you've got one group on the bottom here and one group on the top up here. How are they different? And it's very tempting to have a theory that says, well, some of these are Facebook people, some of these are news people, and deal with the content and the products that we're all interested in. Not the case. People are mostly different based on how quickly they switch. So there are fast switchers and slow switchers. And that turns out to be most interesting. Let me give you a couple other examples of places we're going with this. This is, would be the introduction if you were all a medical precision health group that we're now able to add to all the biology omics, a media, not only an environmental and behavioral context, but a media context, and that's where we actually borrowed the term, or created the term screenome to indicate the same kind of diagnostic that other omics might have. And let me give you an example. These are actual frames that we've seen as we look. So one of the things we're trying to do is, could you use the screenome to make a better health diagnosis than you could through a traditional clinical situation? So you can, in the search, these are just the most simple things to be done. I mean, you might be able to do very complicated things like diagnosing early onset of mania by how quickly people are going through different frames, or other behavior like that. And there are a couple companies that are actually interested in algorithms that do that. But very simply, you can put in dictionaries for street language associated with suicide, like where do you go in Santa Monica to commit suicide? Well, you go to this bridge. And we can find, and this is really very serious. I mean, we can find images of people. They might just have been trying to look up something in the news, but a couple of these that we found and dealt with as human subjects protocols require, were looking for a place to commit suicide. And that's in here. And it may not be in a clinician's office. This is early diagnosis of cancer by looking at exchanges that people had of pictures of bruises that didn't heal. We've dealt with people that are interested in dementia and memory issues. This is from an adolescent who could not get her neck clean. It kept, there kept being this black color on her neck, which is a symptom of insulin intolerance. And any pediatrician would be able to say, if that person got to the clinic, that we need to change the insulin regimen for your health. So interesting things we can do in health. I'm going to keep blasting through here because I had in the title it says addiction, health, politics. I want to hit all of them. One of the graduate students that was working on this did a dissertation on writing. This was with Stanford students. So when you take, this is a screenshot right here. So when you take a screenshot, this is at 1 5-second interval, and then 5 seconds later you take a screenshot and you can see how many words are added. And what kind of words they are. Are they good words? They have interesting vocabulary? Is the sentence structure good? So he did that with about 70 papers that were written over the course of many days by Stanford students in a bunch of different pieces, none of them written beginning to end in one sitting or a couple sittings. And then we can look at these three results here. the most interesting pieces to get here. But we can look at, when you start working on a paper, the next time you switch, is it to something related to the paper or unrelated to the paper? Half the time it's unrelated to the paper. And then you can keep going at different generations away from the original screenshot and see what people are doing. So the initial work segments are short. Stanford students working on paper, the future presidents and doctors and lawyers of the world, are working on their papers in about 1-minute bursts. But the next segment that they work on is even shorter. So it's really fast. Half of all sessions include a switch to unrelated content, within 3 minutes. But this is an interesting one right here. This is an interesting result, and there's several of them like it. When they go to something that's unrelated, when they come back, they seem to be a little more juiced up. They write more words. They edit more words they've already written, which is kind of interesting. It's a reminder that this is powerful rather than absolutely good or absolutely bad. A politics example. One of the things that we worry about, with respect to fake news and news sources and how do people tell the difference and what are the different trajectories that people have through political information. Saw a mention of an article on Reddit. I was just goofing off, searching, just reading stuff. Went to the New York Times, read the article. It mentioned some Saturday Night Live parody. Went and watched the Saturday Night Live parody and then texted a friend about how cool that was. It's just this path from formality to informality, sources we might not think of in the same way. It's critically important that we think about anything happening with respect to trust in government and politics, political information, with respect to what comes before and after, how people got to the small little chunk it is that's defining what they think. Here's an example of a screenome from a graduate student project that was looking at, let's take the bottom line there. This is any of 10 different words that relate to the presidency. And the little lines there are screenshots, also separated by breaks, that relate to the presidency. And the yellow ones are incidental places where the president by name or different words related to the presidency are made. And then the red is intentional names. The majority of formal news that people eventually get to comes from informal predecessors. Facebook posts, Reddit, informal places, which is really interesting. I think it's very important. So they find it unintentionally and then click intentionally to get there. So that's the context in which that needs to be evaluated. Let me mention one last one here, and then give you a summary slide. So people are hugely interested in the concept of addiction right now. This is search terms up through Zuckerberg's testimony. It's just gone wild, and there are board members at Apple that are writing letters to their board saying we've got to do something about the problem of addiction. And former Facebook executives who are starting nonprofits to do something about addiction to television. And they all talk about dopamine rushes and the physiology of addiction and whatnot. And it's part of really a smartphone apocalypse that is very much present, I think, in the news. This is what the addiction is against. So one of the conclusions with respect to the addiction problem is that these sessions that are starting and stopping may be the most interesting piece to look at, because addiction is fundamentally a problem about experiences in short time units that are pieced together over time. You're not addicted to your smartphone and all it encompasses. You might be addicted to the onset of the use of the phone with respect to information that it's producing that may become associated with a small momentary spike in dopamine. This is a little more complicated progression of how this is happening, and we're investigating this now. But objects of addiction like the phone or cocaine activate reward centers in the brain, we know that, and they do it in small little doses, seconds, not even tens of seconds. Sharp increase in release of dopamine, that's true. I don't get a dopamine release for 30 minutes on my smartphone. I get a dopamine release for a message from my wife, or the onset, or even the knowledge that it's coming. So experiences of these rewards become associated with environmental conditions that precede them. This is kind of the Pavlovian part of this, and with repeated exposure, the dopamine cells may fire in response to just the mere suggestion that it's about to come. So that could be an interesting sense in which addiction happens with respect to these session onsets. Okay, I'm going to summarize in 1 minute, if that's still good. 5 things that I want to say that with respect to what we're doing with this new method. There's a heck of a lot of stuff that's been digitized. This is the decades-old promise. It's happening. Completeness has crept up on us. So there's a lot of ones and zeros out there. The ones and zeros have been turned into really cool stuff that's highly produced and really interesting and on our screens. So this is the mediatization of the digital stuff. It's getting the stuff on our screens. And this, all parts of our life are now on there. Social relationships, work, health, finances, shopping, all of it's there. And all of it's there in small little pieces that are right close to each other. And a lot of it is being funneled through these 2 screens. There are still television sets, and we're working on that. The methods we use are compatible with getting these screens from cable systems as well. But there's a consolidation of the screens, so that it's got to get funneled through a narrower piece here, even though it's a whole lot more information. And then these threads. This is the history of media in colors. This is what we've got now. This is what we've had. I'm going to watch a TV program. We're all going to watch the same program at 8 p.m., big blocks of time that had ever smaller interruptions. And now they're threads that are seconds long. These are atomized chunks of experience. And I'll leave you with one last thought about the relevance of this for theory and business. This is what we've got. We've got a thread that's weaving in and out of all these buckets of experience. These are the businesses. These are the theories. I've got some words. These are the theories about how information is used in autonomous cars, or how it's used with respect to money, or work, or social relationships, or whatever, entertainment. But I'm making up my own stuff. And I'm going in and out of all your stuff, and I get to decide, because there's a pause button, and I can change screens without missing a beat. So the implications of this are, and I'll leave you with this thought, what are the businesses, what are the theories? I mentioned a couple data points that are about threads. Thank you.